Episode 21. We are finished The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey. Just listening to...
Well, you had played our last show. You had played the hidden tracks on the hidden album, and I was still it sort of swept my world away this week. Just sort of thinking about the hidden tracks and what they were and stuff like that, and how much a part of it was my favorite part of the album.
Yes.
I think bar none. Like it was exclusively so fun to listen to.
You know, it's funny because there are songs that I hear of yours in the albums, and I think, oh, that sums up Byron. But Creepy Science is you know, as goofy as a song it is very telling.
Yes, there were a couple other songs on the back end that were really fun, but I find sort of retrospectively looking over my last two albums, my favorite parts of my music are all those little parts, just the sort of in-between parts, all that stuff. Me trying to do a song properly, sort of what you consider the template of a proper pop song. Those songs I'm less impressed with a lot more than I enjoy, like the hidden tracks or the small stuff in between and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that part of, if I got to listen to my stuff back again, that's the part I really, really enjoy. And so I came home, you had asked me to play live a couple songs, so I thought of Creepy Science only because lyrically it was such a fun song to write, and I always and listening to those songs last week reminded me of sort of the things that I think I really enjoy about my songwriting. So the thing I enjoy the most would be like sort of the lyrics, listening back, and it reminds me of I was in Hull in the 80s, and there was a jazz club in Hull, and there was these beat poets that used to do this stuff live with a couple of musicians, and they used to play some sort of jazz melody, and the guy would sing something, and then and I was always sort of engaged with that, just sort of using lyrics like that and stuff like that, and I find sort of those tracks at the end were sort of like that. However, so you have asked me to do something live, so I was thinking about sort of Creepy Science. To me is very sort of lyrical. It's sort of like a Broadway type of number, and it's got sort of a classical sort of template as a pop song, an older pop song. So I picked up the acoustic guitar, and so I sort of indulged. So I don't play live anymore. I don't play old songs. I'm always sort of working on new stuff, so I don't sort of work that way now. So I would like to do something live, but I have a couple questions to ask you if we do it. So I did Creepy Science on acoustic guitar, and I really enjoyed playing it. That was the song I did when I played at Zaphod Bebelbrock's after this album, and I did that concert, and Creepy Science was one of the songs I did. So, however, it's sort of an up-tempo song, and the only thing I found that I was really sucking at as far as sort of playing was keeping a constant tempo. Like, I was just completely all over the map. At one point, I just stopped sort of playing and just sort of was playing the chords and just sort of half saying the words, like almost like a beat poet and stuff like that. So I would say... my first observation about my ability to play live, I didn't mind my singing. Actually, I tuned it down half a step just to make life easier and quicker for me.
You and the rest of the musical world.
Sure. I if I got to do it, it wouldn't take long to sort of do something live, so I don't want to make a big deal out of it. So I'll just give myself, and usually I show up here in the morning, so it's a lot easier to sing maybe a half step down. Blah, blah. But it's more important the lyrics now. Like today I say, wow, I want to make sure I get my lyrics across. But so... the tempo thing was a big issue for me, and I don't really know how to. So I'm asking you, sort of throwing it out. So if I did something like how I guess I'm so dependent on click tracks now in my world the last 25 years, and I always play to a drum machine or something like that when I'm doing. So how could we do Creepy Science and keep sort of the tempo?
Why don't I just throw up like a 2/4 beat? Because that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to me it'd be like somebody playing spoons on their
regardless
spoons
of the
on their knee or something. You wouldn't be into playing spoons on your knee and then doing the kazoo solo. That's what I'm getting at. No, I know. I guess.
It's been a while since I played spoons, but yeah, I'll give it a whack.
No, and if you had one
I want
of those,
the ones you buy at the novelty store that has like they're already attached. You don't have to use your fingers.
yes, I
It's
see.
like
you,
the plastic tie.
and if you could play, have a kick drum sort of attached to your body, and
A kazoo on a little.
a kazoo on a thing.
I
Yes,
would
and if you
definitely think you should bring a
do
kazoo.
that,
I'll do
and-
the kazoo solo. I guarantee you.
No, that would help me out a lot. But some sort of confabulation.
Time-keeping device. Yes.
Yes, that would be really good.
And that song would actually lend itself well to that, like a kind of tick tock, tick tock.
Sure, it's a very sort of 2/4 thing. So at the very least, I would just ask you, could you please maybe think of playing some kazoo with me or something? Or just sort of
Yes,
in the
I wouldn't
background?
think of anything but the kazoo. That's probably my best. You know what's funny? Just touching on these things about, there are different iterations of your musical self. For years, I played in a band. Well, for years, I didn't play in a band, just in the studio. And, the one thing that brought me, and I'm very happy, things that are, sort of learned just because of the environment. I worked with drum machines for so long and click tracks for so long that I'll always say I'm not the greatest guitar player, but I have good meter. I know that. And like you said, I've been a closet drummer. I've always wanted to be a real drummer, and I can play a few beats. But like you said, how long is this song? 5 minutes? The same meter, the whole thing, and doing fills and stuff. As individual musicians, when we aren't in our band phases, you get out of practice playing a whole song, let alone 3 hours a night.
Yeah, it was pretty
And we used to do it like it'd be awesome. But can we do another hour? And now, if you ask me to sit and play for 3 hours, I need a nap like probably every 20 minutes.
Absolutely, it's a bit of a workout. I can't imagine being like a drummer these days. I see drummers. I don't know how they do it. Like I don't get all that.
And drummers are the most physical people. 3 hours a night, and they're all skinny like me.
Yeah.
How come every drummer's not like Hercules going? I do this for 3 or 4 hours a night. You think your muscles would just be. But
To me, drummers are just like on another planet. Anytime I get behind drums, I just imagine just like doing all that stuff and the solos and just sort of the tom fills and stuff like that.
Well, my solution is because you don't have to learn the notes. I got obviously a few drummer buddies that always go, yeah, bing bang boom, A G. I don't know. It doesn't care. What's a minor seventh? I don't know. I don't get badoom. Badoom, there you go, drummer.
So that was just sort of that was what I got from last week, and I'd like to do something live, but as long as like if we do some sort of drum machine. So in the next couple of weeks, for sure, I'll just do like Creepy and maybe.
That'd be awesome.
Sure, it'd be my honor, just because it's specifically like these last 3 songs, sort of the hidden track on the hidden album, as I call it, because nobody heard the album. So the hidden tracks, like nobody hears. To me, that's just
3 tracks in specific.
Yeah, well, there's that's one thing I did this week. I put a little video together, just the lyrics, just the words of one of the songs. I'm going to do both the songs. I'm also going to do the Lemon Tree because the lyrics to that are just wonderful, and I think they should be put up on YouTube. I also think I'm going to go back to Bite Down Hard and maybe do games for do like a video for games.
I'd love a couple of Bite Down Hard songs. Only because of the limitations that we dealt with.
Yeah, but and also to get my lyrics up. There's just some wonderful things. So
Sure.
So I did a video.
Keep talking for a bit. I gotta get your
Okay, so I did a video of the last song on the Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey called Goodbye, and I just like the look of words, and especially the words that I wrote, and so so I just
as opposed to everybody else's words.
Yes, well, we're all using the English alphabet, but it was just sort of wonderful. And I spent all week, and I spent actually all day yesterday trying to finish it off. I actually spent 8 hours, and I ended up with about 8 different final versions. But every time I would sort of do it, and then it would like all render out and stuff like that. There was always something about something to this video, just sort of the timing or the transition of the scenes and stuff. Like there's no pictures, I'm just using words and 2 different types of
Sorry, I'm
prompts.
using my second monitor to get up the email, and I had to walk over to look.
No, it's good, it's good.
Okay, I think I'm ready, so anytime you want me.
So play it, yeah.
Oh.
Play it, yeah.
Okay,
play it.
without
So
further ado, this is, sorry.
So it's called Goodbye, I think, but I call it So Long. So Long. So long. Yeah, and I indulged in all sort of definitions on Google about what goodbye means in different languages, and you'll see.
Is this a redo of anything, or is this?
Well, it's from the album, and I just put some lyrics to it. But
You can see I wasn't listening as you gave that whole explanation. This is how
Yeah.
planned out our show is. I have no idea what's going on.
well, yeah, but we don't. That's the beauty of it. But the other beauty of it is if we start blabbing before we press record, we usually miss all the good stuff. So
True. Now, hang on, because I do also want to do our prop. This is May 31st, 2020. We are, we're literally now starting to slowly reopen with the COVID thing. But, they're saying, oh, be careful for a second. We talked about this last week. Anyways, I hope to think we're slowly coming out of the COVID thing. It might take us another year, but at least it's trending in the right way. That being said, recently there's been another racially motivated issue going on in our southern neighbors. And I've just been watching the last couple of days, all the cities in flames, police stations in flames. I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't think I'll ever be traveling the States again. It is crazy. They're crazy. I'm sorry. You guys are crazy.
it's profound the time they're going through. Supposedly the most powerful nation on Earth.
Well, I've heard, great historians say that any great civilization would get about 200 years to do their thing. And then it has to crumble. Like, you can't sustain that. And I think we're seeing this real time in the States. I mean, I hate to say it, but, with the advent of Donald Trump, I just believe that it was just, this is the final crumbling hurrah of a great...
Sure, and it's not so much Mr. Trump, it's the people that put Mr. Trump where he is. And still
Right, I'm just saying he's a symptom. Like, he's like a sign, of the times. And yeah, it's not him, because even now their option for November election is possibly the worst misogynist, racist human being, just the worst, everything, crook, whatever you want. Or a guy who has no idea who he is or where he is or what's going on.
I vote for that in a second.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd vote for a wet sock over Trump. So
I hate to be one of those. I don't even think I just neither one of them spur. Can you imagine you get 2 choices?
well, if you're asking me my opinion, you have to get Trump out of there, Tootswit.
Yeah,
He's not doing anybody any favors.
I'll hold off until I find out who the VP choice is.
Yeah, well, they were
Because
talking
they're
about
basically
Warren.
gonna be-
Yeah, they've been talking about Warren. I heard, and she might be enough to satiate. All
Yeah,
the
at
progressives.
least she's I don't know. I don't even want to talk anymore. I just wanted to sort of touch base on it. But this George Floyd, the killing. I don't know if you saw that video. It's heart wrenching, man.
I couldn't watch it. I heard about it, and I just did not need to see any more of that stuff.
Like, and I'm just thinking, what's going through a cop's mind when, like, I know this guy's in trouble. Like, can't you even selfishly in your own ego play it forward a little bit and go, yeah, this may not be so good for me.
Right. So they say there's about still 90 million people that are full red-blooded Republicans to this day and support the president. So I think that's the bigger question.
Well, I was telling Kristen that, society has a big problem on its hands. I was a victim of getting my head beat in by military psychos who just want to kill people. John Cook and I, we know John Cook from the trilogy. John Cook and I got absolutely almost beat to death in a bar in Kingston, and we were like friendly guys, but these army guys just wanted to fight. So what I'm saying is we train our police, our military to be vicious and take control, alpha, and then you release them to the public, and you have a public now who, unlike before, they don't fear anything. They don't fear anything. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, I'm just saying it doesn't add up to good stuff happening. Kids standing up to these officers, you can't do this to me, and then ka-chang in the head, and it just happened, and it's on. There's another video I saw this morning, somewhere in the States, this woman walked up, big black woman, she walked up to this cop, a white cop, and I guess they were having some kind of verbal. She just hauled off and cranked him in the face like a full-on punch, and he just stood there. And then another cop came from behind and tried to put her hands back, and she got her left, ka-chang, another one on the white cop's face, and he's just standing there. He's pretty good, takes a good punch. And then this black cop walks up behind her, and from behind her, cold cocks her. Oh, she's out cold, clunk on the thing. So I look at this and I'm going, my God, you can play this out in so many situations. Like, what if it's a young black girl who just walks up and shoots a white cop in the head? What if it's like you put these different iterations, you go, oh my God, this is going nowhere good fast, because it's going to happen.
Yes, well, this goes hand in hand probably with my guilt complex. I mean, I feel profoundly privileged to be and live where I am, and I've never been in a minority situation. I'm white, I'm Protestant, I speak English. Never had to deal with any of that stuff that you just been talking about, and I've been raised not having to go to war or anything like that.
Yeah.
And
that's part of what I'm saying, the privileged youth. We don't understand what it was like.
Oh,
right?
yeah, but I almost just become so overwhelmed in guilt that I'm just so lucky where I am right now that. So just what you were saying this week, and I know all the stuff that was going on. Sort of, I will spend a few minutes just sort of knowing what's going on in the States, stuff like that. But it almost makes me want to just bury my head more and just go into just doing my music and I that's not the world. It's just too profoundly upsetting to me to just sort of indulge in that. So, I totally get you, but I can't sort of indulge in that stuff. It's just.
I guess I just look at it. I have a couple of kids, and
it is very sad.
Luckily, you try to get them. Well, my youngest is 18, so I feel like, okay, we've got them to this point, But just to see what goes on, it kind of makes you embarrassed as a human, thinking, this is it. This is how we treat each other all the time now.
Yes, the profound ignorance and hypocrisy can be overwhelming. Well, so I don't know. So instead, I this week I made a video. That's one part of my week. So simple.
Yeah.
Comments.
Well, again, for me, I noticed it in everybody's when they add lyrics to the song. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know about the playback, if it was chunky at all for you or not.
Yeah, so it's sort of timing and stuff like that. It's
the way the words come in. So it always bothers me, and it's just my own personal thing. If I don't know them, I want to know the words. I want to see them before you sing it, or at least exactly the same. So, and even major artists will do this. Like, as the line's going, then they put it on. I'm going, well, it's already happening, and now I'm reading it from the start, and it kind of.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I was getting into, sort of the timing of it. So I was using at the start sort of bigger fonts, and I was using sort of one or two words to come out and stuff like that. But I mean, I could see the music, I could see where I was hitting the notes on visually, and I was trying to put it there, but just because I put it there, you're right, it just comes at the same time. And is that how you want to see it as a human? You're right, because I was saying, like, do you want to see the words just a bit before I'm about to say it and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's depending whether you're doing karaoke or not. Like, karaoke with putting the first word up after it's already started doesn't help you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you said that. So that was sort of yesterday. I spent all day. It would look like it timed out properly, and then I'd play it back, and then there was something that was either jerky to me or it just wasn't coming. And I was constantly moving.
And that's
it
in
back
Elements?
and forth.
For your Adobe Elements?
Yeah.
Do you have resolution playback when you're editing? Like, I put my Premiere always at 0.25%, so I know that it's going to run continuously perfect.
Yeah,
and it just looks shitty.
It is a bit kind of it does play back not as good as when I finally render it out. Yeah.
Well, low res playback, so it will play real time, so you can make your edits. Because that's why I would use After Effects, but it just takes so long to render stuff. As it's playing, it never plays.
Sure, and so that's like I'm getting to the minutia of these things, and that's why I sort of do songs, and I'm sort of trying to put my lyrics out, but I can tell that I wish I had that extra bit of knowledge or power in my computer or something about something just to make it. Where I was talking about that Mac Pro computer that's $60,000. It probably like what do video guys use? Like what if you...
Well, it's not just that you buy a really expensive computer, which you usually do. That Mac Pro now, I think it's like $8 or $9 grand. It's got like 20 cores. And then besides that, you also bring in dedicated video processors and stuff. So now all of a sudden your computer's now solid state. So instead of having to get up to spin with the hard drives, it just accesses stuff real time. The bigger, better setup you have, the more you can crunch numbers.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I saw that stuff, and I still see it today. Like sort of when it's playing out, it's kind of there, but sometimes it's not there, and it just sort of... And I was experimenting with putting things just sort of after, sort of when it hits on the one and stuff like that. And sometimes I was trying to precede it and stuff like that. And it never sort of came out right to me. So I start with a certain font size, right? So sometimes I think, I wish I could just put the whole thing on the screen because it's not as jumpy looking, right? And stuff like that. So and then sometimes I think I'm not smart enough to do this. Like it's just not working out.
It's a laborious thing, and what kind of payback do you get personally as opposed to working on music for the same amount of time?
Exactly. So I gave myself up to I showed up here this morning. I said for this song I just want to get the lyrics out. There's some cool colors on here. I put goodbye with all the other languages of goodbye and stuff like that. So there's some cool things, and really at the end of the day it's the music. So
what I find effective, and maybe you do too when you watch a playback, are those. And I love black and white. I've always been a black and white guy. I mean, as much as I love color, but black and white is so classic. And I love when you go the heavy contrast, white background, black letters, and boom, just swap it. Like in
very much
cool.
so. And I think the last year I've been doing more videos. I've been going back to more black and white, and actually the simpler the better. And I look at this, and even though I tried using some colors, these are all fluorescent or neon colors that you saw there. I specifically wanted to try them against the black background. And I don't know whether I succeeded or not. But still, if I were to just knock it off and just go with a simple white on black and just let the lyrics, have the lyrics sort of spell out like a greeting card, and I could have spent a day instead of a week, sort of trying to put each word.
Do you worry about old school graphic design rules like, I don't want to use more than two different types of fonts?
No, I don't know about any rules. I don't mind learning some rules. They talk about thirds and stuff like that on a picture, where stuff should be in it, all those other things. I think I've sort of gravitated. I used to put, if you remember the videos I did 3 years ago where I used to saturate all the colors and it used to be all crazy and stuff like that.
You take every effect, just go, throw that on there. Hey, that's cool. Throw that.
Absolutely.
You got to do it.
Absolutely. But now I've come to the point where I realize that it's a lot simpler if you're just trying to get your music across, just to use one font, one style. So I've used two different, and that was even a big sort of jump for me this week. And I was really against using two different type of fonts. Maybe I should but I think I've gravitated towards simpler is better, especially if somebody's going to be watching this for the first and one and only time. It's just better just to keep it simpler and just.
Yeah, well, even this series that we're doing, when I put the titles up and all, I know the way you like those kind of cartoonish letters, so I use those a lot. But maybe next week, maybe I'll use a computer font. Like I like the idea of screw the rules. Like whatever I feel like doing. Today I'm yellow.
Right.
And I'm typewriter font. Tomorrow I'm a whole different person. I'm complex.
So I think these cartoony fonts are fine and fun to look at, but actually if I use my lyrics, and my lyrics are sort of cartoony to begin with, so if I use from Creepy Science in my science class, I dissect the teacher's pet, I'm partial to formaldehyde. So if I use a cartoony font, that looks funny, but if I actually use the opposite of a cartoony font, let's say if I use the New York Times, like a classic newspaper font, but use cartoony words in a classic font, I think that comes across almost...
That's the rub then, isn't it?
That is the rub, but that's almost cool because it almost grounds it, and you're reading this classic font, but on this black and white or white and black, and it's got... I dissect the teacher's pet. I'm partial to formaldehyde.
It's like the guy in the stage play murdering someone saying, "I'm so happy."
Yeah, absolutely. Or or those lonesome cowboy songs, those up-tempo lonesome cowboy songs. I'm gonna kill the guy who's dating my wife. All three of my wives.
So that was the goodbye song from the hidden bonus tracks, which I also thought. You know, like you, I'm Creepy Science the last week has been that song. I tell you about the brainworm. 4 bars of it. But actually pretty well goes through about, I'd say 24 bars or so. Like, and I get a longer playback. I'm not in control of the tape machine here.
No control.
It does whatever it wants. But I was also thinking that because the next album we're going to start talking about next half hour, Coy Paradixio, Byron and I decided, let's just do a ton of videotaping and we'll both use it for videos and stuff. But I thought I remembered us doing this song video. Like you sang it in the studio one time. This song. With the bass when you were doing another one. I don't remember. Maybe we'll find it because I think we're going to also now. The nice thing about Coy Paradixio is it also comes along with a treasure trove of video now that you and I have take.
Yeah.
He finished the album, but then he and I would, because again at this point I had bought the studio that John owned when they did The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey. So fast forward, Byron's got his Coy Paradixio album because he'd been working on it the whole time anyways, right? You're overlapping shit.
Different variations, all sorts of music going out.
So he then gets it near completion. An engineer that I'd hired named Brian Smith, Byron and Brian.
We'll get Brian in.
Yeah, he formed a great relationship, and Brian was so cool. He mixed and reproduced a couple of songs, and so we all were hanging out then. So Byron and I decided to take the videotape and go around the studio. So the studio that you're going to see in a lot of these either videos or outtakes is the studio where The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey basically was finished up. The main studio in most of these stories, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. There is a video on, and it's on the internet of these background tracks. Come to think of it, I think I did pull it out, and I took some extra of the video that you shot that day or whatever.
That's something I remember.
And I remember just sort of comping something because I think I was intrigued back then about it and stuff like that. So. Yeah, because
I remember you saturating the color of it so much.
Yeah, I had that Evil Knievel, but the first
that's right.
Give the keys to the guy and don't put a governor on the speedometer, and I'll saturate everything. So
it's funny how even our own memory of all this stuff, mine kind of gets mushed around a bit. Like, I'm not as good saying that was January of 1998. I don't know, somewhere around there. So much stuff happens in this creative space, like your world, my world, everybody's world that we're involved with. it's kind of hard to put a finger down and go, this is who I was with at that time doing this thing, you know?
Sure. Well, there was a space after the album. So there was a space of maybe the year 2000 all the way up to the year 2008 when I got sick. So that's the space preceding Coy Paradixio. So
We should probably have a time chart here that helps us work out too.
No, but we can talk about that 8 years before I actually started putting 2000. So we should take a break and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So just to finish that up, because I'm still kind of confused, like I just admitted. The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey was basically wrapped up and out and done and everything by the late 90s.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And so 2000, because my son was born in 2001, this is how I always manage my life posts. 2001, which is also when my wife and I produced a TV show for HGTV, and it did really well for us. And there was a few years where I didn't work a whole lot. I just sat at home in my underwear collecting checks, and that was awesome. But then it was 2005, I think, I started back in the studio a bunch, just going to see Jay Fee and a few guys, and getting an idea that, because they were interested in getting out. So I'm just getting at the point here that by 2007, I pick up the studio. Like I take it over. And you said at 2008 is when you got sick. So this was all a weird time for all of us, you know. So much shit is going on. You just finished The Alien, Rabbit, the Monkey. Discord.
Late 90s I finished The Alien, the Rabbit. Right.
But in that 5 years, I mean, you're playing hockey, you're recording at home.
Playing tons of hockey. So for that, playing tons of hockey, and then I think I remember I was living with Tracy, who helped do some production on The Alien.
So you guys were still living together after?
We started almost after the album.
I thought you hooked up, because I wasn't close to you at that point, as close. I thought you guys started going out during the making of it.
Oh, well, toward the end and stuff like that. That's when all...
so 4 years, it could have been the last year.
Yeah, well, it was so that was all sort of the problems with John and stuff like that. John enjoyed the good-looking ladies and stuff like that, so...
well, and, you know, there's a bit of a power trip. You know, you own a big studio.
That was a shtick.
People wanted to work there. People wanted to record there. People wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So it probably tends to be a bit of a power trip at times.
Yeah, so still playing lots of hockey, but I remember the first year I had moved in with Tracy, that was the early 2000s, stuff like that. I remember purposely not wanting, with after all the stuff with the Alien, it was the first time I ever sort of was doing something normal. Normal is sort of like living with a girl and stuff like that. So I remember thinking for the first year, I was thinking about sort of just trying some other things out that I've never tried in my life, like living with somebody and actually like being a proper boyfriend and stuff like that. So I didn't play much music. I was always goofing around, like when I had nothing to do, but it wasn't a daily expense, and I didn't have the time, right? I had a girlfriend, right? So we were sort of being doing those couple things. We went to Europe and stuff like that, and. But I was still playing lots of hockey. So, one of the things I sort of indulged while I wasn't doing like a lot of music, I remember for 1 year was I actually wanted to play a video game for the first time. I wanted to go through a whole video game. So I played Half-Life, which I super enjoyed. It was just a wicked game to play. So I sort of got that out of my system. But...
so you just picked up one video game and said, I'm going to learn this?
I did tried a couple other video games to see how far I could get and how much I enjoyed them. Certainly I enjoyed that sort of part of it, but it didn't really result in a lot of stuff for me. Like you can play a game and get through it and spend a few months spending all your life trying to get through a video game, but you don't get anything sort of, sort of doing a song, you actually like finish up with something, right? But so it didn't feel very productive to me.
It's a McDonald's of entertainment.
And very well done, by the way. Like some of these games are ridiculously immersive and just so well done and so fun to be so immersed in. I can see how you can be like addicted to that. So, and I think Tracy at the time, Tracy had been working at San Juan. as you know, she had her problems with John too, with her and I. So Tracy ended up going to working with you and Kirk. And
well, I was going to say it's funny because at that time I remember, Tracy talking to Kirk and I, because we worked together at Healy at the time, and I'm just trying to say I wasn't surprised to hear her story. It also kind of brought back a bad taste in my mouth, of earlier times. Whatever societally is a bully situation a little bit. It really is. I mean, sorry, but it was, and I chose to leave that situation. And a lot of people do. A lot of people can't handle the pressure that comes from that. You know what I'm saying? That pressure, that unspoken kind of pressure.
Oh yeah,
be part of the gang or not.
To be a female and try and integrate yourself into those power dynamics of the job.
Female and because some females can gather respect and some don't. If you don't, it can be horrible. I mean, whatever. I'm no saint. I'm just saying that.
Right.
Everything was disintegrating at this point. So we're getting at it.
I don't think it did her any favors for her own sort of joie de vivre about the music business and all that.
Well, maybe if she bumps into this series, she can comment below on her feelings at the time. And I don't want to speak for anybody other than myself.
No, it was very sort of but obviously she has some great experiences with you guys and Kirk and stuff like that, obviously. So life went on. So Tracy and I went out for like lived together for 5 years and stuff like that. But as I always said, and it's got nothing to do with Tracy, but the day that we actually ended up splitting up, it was about 2005, 2006, or something like that. I might be wrong. For me, it was the happiest day of my life, and it was only because I just realized, so this is one of the realizations in my 40s, I realized I tried sort of being with somebody, and this is up to that point. But what I really wanted to do and what really makes me happy was getting back and doing music on a daily basis. That's what I really enjoyed. I found when I was with somebody that I didn't become Byron anymore. I became Byron and Tracy. I became sort of this co thing, and there was something about my psyche that it just never clicked to me. Like I didn't understand. I was in my friends, I ended up being termed Byron and Tracy. It was always two people sort of, and there was just sort of something about my psyche that just never just sort of codified those things. And when I was with Tracy, I never thought hardly at all about getting married or having kids. Like it never was part of my equation. It was always playing hockey and indulging about
you
music.
Enjoyed your life.
Yeah, and indulging in music. And
I'm not saying other people don't. I'm just saying you said this is what I want to do.
No, and the most important part around that time, about 2003, 2000, was computers were really coming of age. Pro Tools and MBox, you could take it home and you could start like really seriously doing some stuff at home. Because I used to have, as I said, when I started, I used to have a Tascam 4-track. It was fun to do. It's fun to create stuff at home, but it sounds like crap. But you can actually record now at home, like with an MBox. It was just stupid. It was giving me the keys to the toy factory, and the toy factory can be in your house where your bed is too, and stuff like that. And I just like, oh my God, this is the place. So. Yeah, it was certainly for me like just a very freeing moment when I found out I was going to be on my own again.
And I don't think you're totally uncommon in that, so many marriages break down, but people believe because selfishly at the moment, yes, I want to get married. Yes, I'm into this. 3 years later, I hate your guts. Get away from me. Because people just want to gobble everything they want to gobble. And yeah, married. Yeah, that's the thing. I appreciate that. You knew what you wanted to do, and as much as we all crave human companionship, you were craving creativity more than that, and it's neat that you got to stay true to your art.
Yeah, I think I was coming to recognize, and you sort of go through experiences in your 20s and 30s, what you like and what you don't like, but I think I was recognizing in my 40s that it's all about being happy. And I was constantly in my 40s slowly knocking away the things that did not make me happy, and I just would not indulge in those things and just keep to the things that would always make me happy and make me happier. So music was definitely an exciting thing, because for me on a daily basis, music is so exciting to indulge in.
Yes, I suppose I'm trying to think of how, as musicians, that utter joy you get when you do something and that's so good, and that's what spurs you on to doing more and more and more. I think everybody can experience that in their own way when they've created something in their world, and that super joy you get. I mean, I'm just telling Byron that in coronavirus, my wife is just gotten us to go crazy. We've been building fences and patio stones, and my
good.
God, it's killing me. But it's the sense of accomplishment,
Absolutely.
that drives you, right, to keep doing that.
And to
shit.
have your friend show up the next week and go, boy, you've done a lot of work, and boy, does it look good.
You did something I didn't notice.
Absolutely. But you're talking about things that make you happy. So this week, I ended up with a song that I never thought I was going to end up with. I ended up with a whole new lyrics, a whole new melody this week, and I felt so good at the end of this week. I was working on this video as well, but just ending up with a new song, and it ended up with a few chords from the song that I had played you previously, the Emily song. There were a few chords at the end of my session. It looked like I was on a tangent musically. I found them on my hard drive on my session at the end, and they were chords that had nothing to do with the song proper, and I was just sort of like listening to them, and I just sort of ended up like doubling them and stuff like that, and I found there was this beautiful sort of like melody over on top. And next day I thought about it. I wrote the lyrics that day, and I sang it that day, and most of it sounds great. And just to have it just sort of appear, and it had, I will play it to you next week. I think it'll be done by next week. It was just, it made me feel so good for the rest of the week.
I've asked you before, but I would guess, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that nowadays you're primarily writing lyrics to pre-existing music of yours.
Sure. Right now, it's important for me, and this is a big part of the period that we're talking about. I did a lot of music in the 2000s, right up to the time I got sick.
I mean, like music without lyrics, just a lot of tapestries.
There's a lot of everything. There's a lot of music without lyrics. There's a lot of music with lyrics. There's a lot of half ideas. There's a lot of three-quarter. There's tons of three-quarters of ideas. There's a lot of three-quarters produced and finished stuff without stuff not being finished. So there's a whole variant. But as I tell you, going back and listening now to the stuff, it's very easy for me to say, I don't like this, I like this, I'm going to do this, and maybe I can sing something into this right now. But it's like a Mr. Dress-Up's toy box that he opens up and says, what am I going to play with today? Yeah, it's like a toy box, and it's all stuff that I've done. So I just
it's nice that you've already got things, you can pull out this or that.
Yeah.
This would work over here.
Right. So I've thought about doing some new stuff. I very much want to do some new stuff, but I seem to be in this mode that I don't want to have all this stuff that I got buried. I want to bring it to life, and it just sort of has been sitting there. And the joy about it is half the tracks have been recorded, and I don't feel married to any part or anything, and I can just take what I want and just put lyrics on it and go.
And there is another weird thing. Just before we take our little break here, I'm always, I've always compared Byron, like his music, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that I can put it up against any commercial artist, and it's no better, no worse. Like it's another take on a high level of junk. But the interesting thing is that because Byron's never searched out fame or notoriety, he just does stuff and puts it away. That allows him the creative freedom. Like, I don't think Paul McCartney's going to go and take Let It Be and go, I think I want to do a beer hall 2/4 song with that. Let it be, baby, let it be. You can't do it anymore. Sorry. That is now in the Parthenon of everybody's life, and you can't fuck with it. When Byron stuff, you can just go, I'm going to take that one. Nobody's married to that over here. But then again, I go, but isn't that the way great art is made? I mean, you think of novels, of especially episodic serial stuff, where reoccurring characters come in. Why can't reoccurring themes come in? Stage plays, the musicals, they always have reoccurring themes coming in.
Yeah, very much so. I'm always intrigued reading about artists, painters and stuff like that, who have had a career and who have a painting room and have old art sort of sitting around. And while they're making new art, sometimes they bring their old art into their new art and stuff like that. Or sometimes they have a painting they're always fixing. I think
it's kind of funny. In music, you're almost not allowed to do that once it's famous.
I'm in a position. It's just always organic. It's what I feel like doing every day. But I'm so very much in the mode now of putting stuff on YouTube now. At least to put a stand. I enjoy very much adding to my little YouTube channel, putting stuff on YouTube. It just makes me feel like I've done something and it's out there. And
I like also the fact that when I hear your songs, whether it's a new composition or not, I tend to always hear little motifs that I've heard before, because I know in your brain you go, oh, this works well in here too. It's not that it's wrong. We always use conventions in music, right? Little tricks, and throw stuff in all the time. It's either a production trick or a musical trick,
Well, sometimes you were just talking about that, where you have bringing different motifs in and stuff like that to a song. And I think sometimes a lot of the songs I come across have 2 or 3 different motifs in a song, and sometimes I find I'm separating them and making separate YouTube videos for each motif and just presenting them as little minute things or 2-minute things. So if there's any similarity, sometimes it's because
last week too.
No, it's true. It's good timing.
Your motifs.
I'm sure, yeah.
Now I have to find a flushing sound effect.
So I have different motifs, but I think I just split them up now, and that's why maybe if there is some similarity, especially recently, it's probably because some of the different YouTube songs come from the same session, and I just sort of split them up, and I just sort of make minute things or whatever like that. Yeah, doing a pop song, I don't want to do 3-minute, 4-minute things anymore. I get bored by myself, and I would imagine, but I like listening to my 1 or 2-minute little things.
Yeah, we touched on this last week as well, the length of songs. It's funny how music gets stuck in this certain way of this is what you have to do. Like, where did music get hijacked, popular music, and said you have to have a 3.5-minute song? Well, I think it came back to the old American DJ thing, right, where this is what we like to have in a song. We like it at 120 BPM, 3 minutes, you're out. A couple of choruses. It's so confining in a way. Like, you're going, I got to write another verse here. Okay, I've already said what I think. I've only got like 12 lines to say about that particular topic, and now I need another verse.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing about technology, and I think a lot of people that are sort of set in their ways about how they used to watch movies, as you hear a lot of directors say about that, about how people used to experience movies. Even now, people don't go to theaters because of the virus, but you hear, especially YouTube, people making podcasts or sort of these film things that are 15 minutes. You see Netflix, the variety of times of each episode. I guess
as humans' attention span.
Yes. Well, what do the kids indulge in now? This TikTok and these other
15 seconds or 1-minute videos.
Right, and this is how. Dancing. So this is how these kids communicate. This is these are the smoke signals of today, right? So so the story is within 15 seconds and it disappears. Is that the idea? Or I don't really understand.
I don't have it either.
I don't get it.
My wife downloaded it. She watches them, and I know that my kids watch them all the time.
Sure. Sure, and a lot of it is you just get sort of stuck on a certain YouTube host that has a character that you might sort of indulge in or whatever.
I'm guilty of that because I watch a lot of YouTube, and there are certain people. I was telling Kristen, it's like the old days when can you imagine having like a 1.5-minute opening of your TV show? You're going, for a 1.5 minutes, I'm done. Like, not just the intro with the song. Hey, welcome to the Facts of Life. Nowadays, it's usually just a sentence or two that is their catchphrase, and you hear that and you go, I want to see this. There's a couple of people I watch this, and I'm sure if there's anybody watching, there's some people you may recognize. Phil from Wings of Pegasus, he does analysis videos of musicians and bands.
Okay.
I like his point of view.
Right.
So he always starts out with, "Hello, it's Phil from Wings of Pegasus here with another analysis video today." That's exactly how he opens it, but even the way he sounds. But I'm so used to hearing that it's a familiar ring that I go, "Ooh, I want to listen to that."
Yeah, especially
I like his take.
Especially during these times, it's nice to have some constant thing every day and stuff like that. So you watch those things. Yeah.
Well, even our show, hopefully there's some type of repetition here that people enjoy. Although we are taking a long form, where everything else we do is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. This podcast, as you know, every week we put out an hour plus, which is obese.
Sure. Well, we try and talk about this at least 2 songs a show.
So there you go. Okay. We did a redo of Goodbye. Or whatever you want to call it. But next half hour, we start Coy Paradixio.
Or how we got to there.
How he got to there.
How I got to there. I did.
Monday to Sunday. You got a crush on me. Hug me in the morning. Even in the evening. In the middle of a daydream. Or maybe I won't be alone. Hold me like you'll never let me go. Squeeze me.
You're so creepy, way too creepy. You're quite creepy. You're rather creepy. I'm not like those other guys. My gyroscope doesn't jive. La la la. That's the way the song should go. Especially with the lights out and somebody waving that.
Just weird enough, isn't it?
Just saying.
I'm just saying. But I love the frivolity of the song. So many times I found when we were younger and we were in rock bands, you always had that, "I'm angry," and "Oh, look at me." And during my time in the Hoobers, I remember always encouraging, that's smiling. I think people like to see us having fun too, you know. Like,
No fucking smiling.
this is rock. We're angry about
Smile.
something. We're angry about getting chicks. Anyways, welcome to part 2. This is the start of the 3rd album, Coy Paradixio, and as we left off last half, we were just kind of discussing the chronological series of events. So a lot of these songs from Coy Paradixio were, like a lot of, I'm sure, artists, and I can let him tell it, but I know the origins of a lot of these songs were sort of in their formulative stages during the recording of The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey. And like any artist, you know, you delineate, these are kind of the ones for this one, and you can't stop the ideas, so they're going.
Yeah, so it was from about the early or even before 2000 all the way to 2008. So I know I was still at Sound of One Hand and just talk with John about doing sort of like second album and stuff like that. And so during that time, that's when I met Susie, and Susie was one of the interns at that time. And I was looking for some other vocalists to help me sing some songs that I was doing while I was at working at John's. And we picked Susie out, and Susie was a musician in her own right. Susie was about 21 back then, great voice. And so Susie started coming in and singing, and there was talk about doing an album for her, so I was doing stuff for her. So a lot of that, I was doing a lot of stuff, but I wasn't finishing any stuff off during that time. Just doing a lot of music, writing a lot of stuff, not really finishing off anything like that. So there was sort of Susie time, and then there was sort of around 2003, 2004. There was when I actually got an inbox in my house, and I started really using a computer for the first time and indulging way too much in having a computer, but spending a lot of time doing music at home and stuff like that. and still playing tons of hockey, just an inordinate amount of hockey and stuff like that. So it was just hockey and music with people, but not sort of doing any albums and stuff like that. John had sort of flown the coop by then, sort of in the middle of the second album, stuff like that. Same thing with
So a lot of this had been, like, the recording had started.
There was always sort of recording, but never just sort of sort of finishing things off was a big deal, and was probably one of my worst traits. Was never could finish anything off. Always wanted to try new things out and stuff like that. So whether it was trying to finish off the Alien, the Rabbit, and the Monkey, or going on to my next one, I was taking lots of time. Always and. I was taking lots of time because I was always indulged with the tools of the studio. I would spend all day at the studio just working on stuff and just freaking myself out at trying music in different ways and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of stuff wasn't getting done in one way, but a lot of stuff was getting done during that time period. So it was just sort of, I was with Tracy, and then that sort of ended, but I really just sort of went back to doing like a lot of music back then and stuff like that. And then in 2008, or actually in the late 2007, I got sick with cancer. I had testicular cancer, and I actually found, we had talked about this in a previous episode, but I had found out that I had cancer through a hockey injury. And which was
crazy. A quick recap. He's playing so much hockey.
I'm a goalie, and I got ripped in the crown jewels and broke my jock, my protector, and I'm like, that's never happened. It was probably the hardest shot I've ever had in my life, and yeah, it just, things never got better, and I ended up going a couple of weeks later to get an ultrasound, and found out there was some black mass stuff inside me, and then next thing I knew, I was at the hospital, and I had. So this was early.
Talk about a weird.
This is February.
Way to discover an injury. It's so profound, really.
Very lucky, yeah. So that was February 2008 when it was discovered. So so I had luckily I had been playing a ton of hockey. So I was in.
And you and Tracy had split up before that.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So that was a couple of years before. So a few years before. So luckily I was already in good shape, and they caught it early. So I had to go on some chemo because the cancer had spread by the time they caught it, and took me about 6 months to get over it all. I'm here. I'm cancer free. I had 2 operations, and so I had some time off from work, and so I spent that time. I did 2 things while I had cancer, and I remember specifically, after I had my diagnosis for cancer, it was February. It was a wintry day. It was on a Wednesday, going to the hospital, meeting my doctor for the first time, and being told that I had cancer, and I'd have to be admitted and stuff like that. And I remember coming home, and I remember thinking, this would be a good time to start finishing things off. I remember the drive home. Actually, I had to drive home to work to tell them I had cancer and I wasn't going to be available to them for the next half year. But I remember driving it, and I sort of had the first ping about it, sort of thinking, man, there are some things I just got to finish off at some point in time. So one of the things when I was driving there was thinking, well, if I'm going to have some time off, my grandfather, my mother's father, had fought in World War I. I had his medals, and and so I should. I wanted
Wayne Smith,
and
lest we forget.
Right, and I had found that all the war records were, at least for Canadian soldiers, were now online, and so I said I'm going to take this opportunity because I live in Ottawa, the nation's capital. All the records are at the Ottawa Archives on Wellington Street. So I said I'm going to take this opportunity and this time while I'm sick to do some research on my grandfather. Because this is something I've always wanted to do, and so that was the start of that.
Was that like, you must have been questioning your own mortality at that point, and who you are, and
I definitely remember being in the hospital one day. Now, I had a great experience in the hospital. I enjoyed my time in the hospital. I knew I was going to get over this because of I was in really good shape, and
you got it early enough.
And I was told I had a 90 to 95% chance of them getting rid of this.
That helps.
Although I had some stuff to go through. Like I had 3 months of chemo, and then I had a big operation at the end, like a 6-hour operation. But like if you're going to ask somebody to sort of do it, somebody like me, it was good timing. It was good timing, and it was good timing that I actually got caught when I caught it, and stuff like that.
But you, just from my own perspective, when you called me, and I remember how shocked I was, but you're already a very private person, so Byron kind of went through this on his own. I mean, nobody really heard from him.
So the big effect would be having to tell my mom that I had cancer. That was kind of a hard thing. And the other thing was my vanity. Was when I was going through chemo, it wasn't so much the cancer that I gave a crap about. It was losing my hair, and so I lost all my hair, and that was just sort of my vanity just completely deep six me. That kind of.
Do you have any pictures from that time?
I refused. I was asked to be done, and I just completely told, do not even attempt it. There's just no way it's going to be going. That's why I wouldn't want to see my friends or anything like that. I was actually kind of embarrassed by it all and stuff.
I'm sure. Like, I mean, I'm just being honest. Everybody would feel a million different things, you know.
You certainly go, why me and stuff like that. Like, I'm not supposed to get this stuff. I've been really sort of Peter Pan all my life, sort of been very sort of lucky, and so like, why should I be getting all this stuff like that? So you can go through the gamut. That being said, and go back to it, I really enjoyed my experience. There was a lot of great people. Being in a hospital, there's a lot of smart people in a hospital. Your doctors are incredibly smart people. So I enjoy and I always enjoy talking to smart people. So I enjoyed my time. I really try and revel in my experience. I knew I was going to the hospital. So that being said, I remember one time lying in bed, and the nurses, the nurse had just come see me. The nurses are just incredible people. The nurse had just come to see me about something, and I remember lying in my bed thinking of all the stuff that I had done, but I hadn't finished off, and I'm talking musically. I remember a very specific feeling of, it was a very heavy weight that I just sort of allowed myself to be under, and I just said, you know, I got to remedy this. I have to start finishing things off. I got to make an album. I got to at least get this out somehow. So that was probably, at least for my psyche, the biggest push and the biggest sort of just like an anvil coming down on my head and going, stupid, you've done your work, start working on stuff. And so I always, so from that moment on, getting out and finishing it, from that moment on, I was pretty well set on making songs or making albums, just finishing things off.
I think just a little reflection on that. People consider their own mortality, but when you're kind of faced with it, I get what you're saying in that having kids, you know, I've come to a few of those sober thoughts, like, I'd say, what if my wife and I get wiped out in a car crash? Like, do kids know where everything is? Like, I mean, you leave stuff behind undone, you know, and you're going, oh my God, that's true. Yeah. I do have life insurance, you know, we're all covered, but would they know where to find all this stuff? You know, like you start thinking about it. When you're gone, it's just it ends. Mm-hmm. And is everything like my computer? Does people know how to get into it? Like, you know, you start thinking about this stuff. I'm sure that was just all clouding your mind. And
yeah, I wouldn't. I think there was some. Yeah, I don't think there's a dogmatic thing to say about it. I don't think you can make sort of a overreaching one thing. There's all little things that come into it, right? And and what are people going to find in your drawers and stuff like that? It's an obvious question. And do I want to have? Do I want people to come across these things in a half-assed state, or do I
was just saying, like, someone go, oh, here's a hard drive of his. Like, leave a note and say, give it Steve, because I'll be able to look and go, no, he doesn't want anybody to hear that. But it's true. You think, but then again, I go, but who cares? Because you're gone. And then people say, but it's your legacy. And I heard someone saying something really smart, because, you know, I'm not a big theist. Someone was saying, well, you know, what about when after you're gone? The guy said, well, think about before you were born. Well, I can't. Well, why worry about it? You know?
Very much. And that's also part of the conversation. Like, who cares? I'm going anyways.
But But you want to say, I can make an order of stuff as much as I can until I go.
Yeah, it's kind of. I would like to leave, for all the people that I love and stuff like that. And
Did you ever write anything out? Did you ever?
So up to that point in time, so I've been playing hockey tons, and I never told my hockey mates what I really did. I told them if they ever asked, I played guitar or something like that, but I never told them I was indulged heavily into making albums, stuff like that. So nobody really knew like what the hell my life is about. I don't have kids and stuff like that, and so sometimes I consider geez, like what part of it is just like I really wonder what people think I do with my time, and it'd be nice to actually just sort of have stuff around that actually has got some of my stamp. If I'm not going to have kids, then my kids will be maybe my work and stuff like that. So just sort of something. That's why I started putting stuff on YouTube these days. It's so fun and so important.
The whole impetus for this podcast that has turned into just us talking about life and stuff. I knew it was important. You don't have children, and I've always been about this, that people that do great things, my original idea was Armchair Genius, was the TV show that we all know people that do stuff at a very high level. In every neighborhood, there's tons of people that are crazy capable of shit, and some of them that aren't married with kids, when we do shuffle off, it just goes off into the wind. And I wanted to make sure there was something that people could go back and go, hey, this was pretty neat, and here's a whole bunch of stuff about it.
I think I had a better sense. So as I told you, I sort of went through that thing with being with somebody, and that was sort of around the same sort of time frame that this happened. So it's sort of finding, they always talk about sort of finding who you are, the sense of yourself. And I know I tried some stuff around that time, but I think I was very sort of specific that I am a big romantic as well, and I see artists. I read about artists, painters, and they have their art room and they have their paintings around and stuff like that. And I understand how good it feels to get to try and finish something off, and so I just had more of a sense that I didn't want things buried anymore. I just wanted to start getting things out and stuff like that. And so that was the impetus.
Well, I'll make two observations before maybe we'll just kick off with the song from the new album. But two things that I guess from my perspective I can say, and maybe erroneously, but Byron will correct me, the way I viewed this album, because again, as we come back together, because when he and John, it was a bit of an acrimonious split, which, I don't want to say was uncommon for John and a few people back in the day. Anyways, but when you guys split and you took over most of your stuff again, and you were extracting yourself from the relationship with Tracy, that's when you and I started sort of hanging out again. And it's a nice that you have, we all have friends that are there that say, you go and do your thing. And when you need me, I'm here, man. And that's the way we got back together.
Yeah, it was great.
Started appreciating this. So from my point of view, because I was also aware at the same time, we talk about a guy named Kirk Ellert, one of the greatest human beings that ever graced the earth. And for some reason, he decided he liked music that myself and Mike were playing, very, very low-key music. We were called medium fi. We weren't hi-fi, we were medium fi. But it was very, very folky, heartfelt songs, and Kirk loved it. He joined our band, and he was also working with me at Healy Disc at the time, and we were friends with Tracy and Byron. And the whole thing is all one big intermixed thing. The same time Byron had his cancer, Kirk was also diagnosed with cancer while he was playing with Mike and I.
Crazy.
Very crazy. And so, me personally, I'm dealing with two of my best friends, Kirk, who's at this point, he even said, the doctors say I'm riddled with it. He had just ignored it for a long time. Byron, on the other hand, had told me that they think I can beat this. And it's weird to be in that fulcrum point, where two of your best friends are in this situation. So, again, I just want to... Kirk passed away, sadly. And so anyways, what I'm saying is, when I finally heard Coy Paradixio in its whatever state it was, to me this represented, and I know there are some songs, and this album is exactly this, represents Byron beating cancer. So you'll hear in some of the songs here, and through Byron's sort of narrative, that songs that represent his battle and his winning the battle. There are also songs about relationships that don't go the way you'd hoped, which are very standard for albums. But that's just kind of, I want to get the idea behind some of the mindset of the album. Now, is that wrong for me saying that?
I think it was a lot more succinct and honest how I approached this album, going through what I've gone through. I can definitely tell I sort of turned a sort of an emotional corner as far as my, I think so this is me using computers and stuff like that, simplifying things and stuff like that. Yeah, it's my experience. I call it my cancer album. It's just the time I was going through, and it's just sort of me sort of digging myself out of my musical hole that I had left myself in with so much stuff unreleased and stuff like that. I'm looking at one of those songs, that picture right there, and I bet you that's the one that's got, the first one that you picked. That first one that you picked, I think, is the one that's got the hidden tracks from Me, Aileen, the Rabbit and the Monkey. I think that's the one. So just quickly, this is from maybe 2009, this album. The title, Coy Paradixio, happens to come from my looking through my grandfather's war records. So I found out who my grandfather fought for. He came from Scotland, and he fought for Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. And I found his war records, and one of the things that I was able to find out was his commanding officer, because I knew his regiment and his regiment number. And you could go online and you could read the diary of his commanding officer. His commanding officer had a diary which they put on microfilm, which you could read online, so you could follow where they went every day and stuff like that. So he was stuck up in the north of Belgium where Ypres was. That was his big spot. And his regiment would do these parades in the towns. That was like sort of the big thing, I guess, to make the people or the townsfolk. I mean, I guess it was a big thing to do back then. So they would have these company parades. So there was a handwritten thing in the guy's diary that said it was short for company. It was COY, Coy. And then he had parade, but it was kind of smudged, and I kind of looked at it, and I don't know what made me sort of look at it, but I kept thinking about Coy Paradise, and there was just a connection of looking through my grandfather's commander's diaries and seeing that phrase and just sort of turning it a bit and making it into my own.
I didn't know that.
And just having that little connection that every time I say the word Coy Paradixio, I think of my grandfather, because that came from his. Of course, if you go to the name of some of these songs, I got really into making up my own language, and some of them I was just making up names and stuff like that, just screwing with letters and stuff like that. And so I like Coy Paradixio. I like the fact that when I actually got the website for this. So you have to type in like the phrase that you want. And,
I'll put it down here.
Yeah, you have to type in the phrase, and of course nobody had it, like, because nobody made it.
That's the beauty of it.
And if you Google it, it's not nobody
and it rolls
made
off the tongue nice.
So yeah, if you get it, so I just enjoyed it, and that's why it's called Coy Paradixio. So are we just going to play one quick song?
Yeah, the nice thing here is that because it is the video experience online, you just follow along with coyparadixio.com. We're just going to start with the first song.
Sure, can we hear one song?
and let it roll, and then in the following episodes
excited.
we'll listen to the rest of the album. But this first one, I do believe, is this Bump to My Head on the Moon?
Well, no, I believe this first one is Every Time. I'm looking at Every Time.
Oh, okay.
And the individual that I remember playing with me on Every Time was Peter Kieswalter, who's who I grew up with in the music department at Brookfield. Great musician. I think went to spread his brilliance in New York, I believe. I don't know much about it, but Peter was a brilliant musician. Still, probably. Well, Peter is a brilliant musician. So he played the keyboard bass on this.
And it is Susie singing.
I think Susie's on there with me.
Yeah.
I believe so. This song specifically, yeah.
Yes. So let's take a listen to it. It's so I think this
And
is...
you did some video stuff, yeah. This is me at my video
Right.
craziness.
So like the underlying thing here is that this whole album, Byron and I just decided to do videos. Well, like we decided, Byron acquiesced to let me do a video for a song called "Strange as It Seems," but then we just kind of exploded and we did tons of videotaping
Yeah.
in the studio. Byron lip syncing his songs, us being out in the
Crazy.
parking lot. So this is an amalgam of just all the video shit we. I don't even know what it looks like. So
Oh, yeah, I
I'm
haven't
just
seen it
giving
in a
that.
while. I haven't seen it in a
Here we
while.
go. Here we go.
Every time you have me at hello, every time you had me at goodbye, every time you move your lips, you don't even have to say a word. Kiss me. Shut up.
Kiss me.
Kiss me. Every way that you tell me, sometimes something better left unsaid. Everything that you show me, never had to say a single word. Shut up. Kiss me. Slower than molasses. Faster if you wish, more than anyone surpasses. Slower than molasses. Can do for any time, any place. Pick your body. Every single time. Kiss me. Kiss me. Oh. Every time you move your lips. Kiss me. Slower than molasses. time.
Oh,
I
that,
enjoyed that.
that was awesome. Did I not stop this thing? What the hell? You want to hear that till next week?
Sounded wonderful.
Every time.
I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed that.
Recollect me any origins, any
I just
thematic-
remember having Peter Keyswalter over in one day to the studio and him recording a bass track on his keyboard, and he played bass on those bridges.
It walks up the chromatically.
Kiss me, slower
It keeps
than
going up. Yeah.
slower than molasses, faster if you wish, more than anybody. And I always loved the chords. It seemed very sort of jazzy, and I loved the vocals. And I haven't heard that in a while, and it was wonderful to hear. Boy, that made my day. That was wonderful.
So
I don't remember much else. I don't know who played guitar. I imagine it's Brian on guitar.
slower than molasses.
Yeah.
Faster if you wish, more than anything surpasses.
Yeah. Kiss me.
Right.
Yeah.
Slower
But
than
I think I really like the line "slower than molasses." I like that. Just sort of it's kind of like a romantic song and stuff like that. Every time, it really sort of grooves. It's kind of got a sort of a '70s sort of.
I love it entirely. And tell me I'm wrong, but I kind of remember an initial version of this song that was a little more straight ahead.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And that's where I think both of us were like really jazzed on it, because I think that the original motif may have been around for a long time.
It was, and now that you mention that, I do remember. So every time was a song that I used in a chorus, and I used that phrase every time. So Susie actually got picked to start working. Well, picked. She was gracious enough to allow me to use her vocal talents. But I was looking for a singer. John, we were in Studio A at the time, I remember, and there were 3 girl interns, and we stuck them in the sound booth, but we could not see them, so we could hear 3 different girls singing, and that was a song called "Every Time I Had." Yes,
I had nothing to do with that.
no, but you're correct, and that's why I remember that phrase "every time." But we were interested in or I was interested in which voice stood out to me. And so it was just sort
Just a
of
blind taste test.
Yeah, it was sort of this loop thing, and Susie was the one that absolutely just.
So you don't remember who else? Beth Henderson was there, maybe.
I don't remember who else. Who
Andrew
was in there.
Karam, maybe. Yeah.
I don't
Randy
remember.
Karam.
And Susie just Susie got that sweet little girl voice and stuff like that, and I still tend to bump into Susie's voice through going through all this stuff.
Yeah, I hear
She was
her
wonderful.
voice coming back up on new pieces. You have a library of stuff that you utilize to create your art.
We did a lot of work together. She sounds wonderful. I really enjoy I can't believe how much work that we ended up doing together and stuff like that, going back through all this stuff.
So let me just get back to the subject matter. I mean, this is just a simple every time what?
So this is me with Pro Tools, with my tools in my studio. This is the first time.
I meant like lyrically, as in
No,
we know
no.
that "Kiss Me Slower Than Molasses." I get that, the iteration there. What about like the lyric, like during the verses, like
I would imagine that every time you had me at hello, all those lines is probably me.
because you don't use it grammatically correct. You
Yes, well, I imagine it probably got something to do with me and Tracy when I first met her and stuff like that. Knowing that I'm sort of true to how my experience is, so I starting the album off with sort of that just sort of seems to be logical. That was sort of the start of my time. And stuff like that.
So this album has parts of in a happy relationship and then going into other places as well. So.
Yeah, well, I still think this is a very happy album because I did.
Well, it's winning, as far as the cancer
so,
thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think there might be a few more sort of darker songs. Stuff
And like you say, you love Tracy, but you're also, in the end, she's now happily married with children, and you're doing your art. So I guess you're saying no harm, no foul. It's all good. And
no, we all go through our lives, and that's what you experience and stuff like that.
So a simple song about love and whatnot.
Yeah, but I can hear musically. I can hear for me me doing my own studio stuff. I can hear that what I wanted to start doing now. Now I love listening to all that Alien the Rabbit and stuff, Alien the Rabbit and the Monkey stuff. But now I'm using loops and samples and stuff like that, and to me it sounds a lot more grounded. This sort of the backing tracks to me and stuff like that, and I like sort of because at that time we're hearing a lot more rap stuff, a lot more samples and stuff like that. So I was actually able to start indulging more in sort of contemporary sounds and tools. So I'm actually using a bit of old and a bit of new on this. I can hear that, and I think it sounds wonderful.
That's kind of your standard operating these days, is a little of old, little of new.
Yeah,
it
just makes more tools that you can use at your disposal. But I love using samples and stuff, 8-bit things and grainy stuff, and you're just creating a soundscape, right? So you just got the vocals and sort of something sort of pumping along in the background.
And this one, upon a re-listen, to me, is more. Because Byron, I always have this thing. I'm always saying to him, "I love your stuff, man, but you never let a song go through where I know we're going to stop at some point and do something." But that one sounded a little more standard. Like it sounded like it kind of kept going. There are a couple of stops, but not as abrupt as
No.
efforts.
And that voice that you just said it in, that voice is always goes in my head. I always hear your voice about trying to, and it's something I always battle with, but I take it as a positive thing. But I always can hear you going, Byron, are you letting it go long enough before you're stopping?
I just want people to tap their feet for a little while before you stop.
I know. I'm just saying, but it's your voice. This is, and it's a good thing. But it's you're always sort of in that realm, always sort of in the background of my head. Saying,
well, I've always been a sucker for, as much as I don't like the 4.5 minute song, I do like being able to tap my toe and getting into a really, I think that's why I love Shifter so much for me. It was very definable. You know when that part was coming, and you gave it to me, and I loved it. And then he took that song that I love so much, Shifter. It might be one of my favorite songs ever, just everything about it. And then he, of course, does a new version, and he goes, "Listen to that." And I went, "Yeah, it's great."
Well, it's
like
well,
someone says to me, "Here's Getting Better done on a xylophone." I'm going, "Yeah, it's cool. I love it."
Well, we've talked about putting those two versions of the songs up. And
yeah, we'll do that one of these episodes.
But and I forgot what I was going to say, but sure, you're right. But yeah, okay, so
getting back into that was a song was pretty nice and
right,
legit.
And those are the fights I always get. So I always get into the micro managing of a song, so that's usually why I'll get into a little section and just sort of be looping it, taking things out, and because I always like silence before some music go. It's always a great way to sort of do stuff. But over 3 minutes, it might not work having that stop in there. But in that little time thing, so I'm always fighting that thing. But yes, that phrase is always in my head.
Well, another neat thing is that this is just like a personal observation as well. Up until I just call it by albums as far as our chronological existence goes. But up until the end of The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey, I found Byron. He's one of my best friends, but he's a little cynical. Everything, and everything, and obviously being in the slightly, I don't want to say toxic atmosphere, but in that locker room kind of atmosphere thing, it didn't help you. But the Tracy thing, the cancer thing, the ending of The Alien, the Rabbit, the Monkey, this new album, like when Byron and I started hanging out again, I remember telling Kristen, this is just after you kicked it, and we were both at Kirk's funeral, which was a bizarre time.
Yeah.
Byron changed. He went from being this cynical kind of, I don't care about anybody, to this, I love everybody, peace and love, let's just do art, and everybody love each other. And it was just it was a profound change, I thought. I don't know if you noticed it or not.
Oh, well, I think I discovered my freedom. I think I knew what made me happy. I just sort of figured it out over that sort of time. I said, yeah, that's what really makes me just a pig in a...
Yeah. I mean, I think I had the same thing
Pig
because...
in a what? Pig in a...
In a whistle.
Pig in a whistle.
Pig in a thistle.
Sure. if that makes me happy.
You know, the cancer thing is an overarching story that obviously just coincided at the same time so bizarrely. But I know the freedom you're talking about. John can be very controlling in the studio, and by spending time with him, you're either being controlled or being manipulated in some way. And not in an evil way or anything. I'm just saying that it happens. And at the end of my business relationship, I felt that the joy of being free, and I guess it's like if people get divorced, what they feel like.
Yeah, I don't have to. So I've always felt guilty, even though I'm not guilty. And sort of, if I'm in any close relationships, it would just become too stressful at some point, because I always think I did something wrong, or I'm not up to certain levels, or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or even if I'm told it's okay to play hockey, I think there's something that is not right about me going out and playing hockey. Yeah, go play hockey.
I remember that exactly, playing hockey too. I used to play a lot of hockey as well, and feeling guilty that I'm going to play hockey for an hour.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, no, you go play hockey. Just that. It's like, can I just go play hockey and stop some pucks, please, and be happy about it? So it was all that stuff. Yeah, I don't think I ever took over this. So I just found out, just sort of being guilt-free and just sort of enjoying your own.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say to that point is, as I was looking through some of your diary entries, and this is a case in point, is you'd write, there was a drum track for a song done last night. I arrived today. I'm not allowed to hear it. I'm not allowed to hear the drum track. And I'm going, that's great. Then I'm doing flashbacks of having little things you're not allowed to hear. No, it's not for your ears. What? Anyways, whatever. So the freedom.
Okay.
That's one thing I hear in this album, is that freedom, is that profound change in your personality because of the cancer battle, because of the alien, the rabbit, the monkey battles. It's just coming out the other side, out the other end of the tunnel and going, holy crap. And having a new lease on life, you can just imagine how that would just put a exclamation mark on the whole period.
Well, it certainly instills in one's mortal coil that one should revel every day one wakes up healthy, and that could be said to any human being. It's important, and when your health is taken away from you, it becomes your everything. So feel grateful and lucky that you have your health every day.
It's always something that's happening to somebody else until it happens to you, I guess.
Yes, or your loved ones. So although you can't do it, you're supposed to give everybody important to you a hug every day and be grateful.
Except these
grateful
days.
To him. Yeah, well, I think I always remember sort of the phrase in my head when I was in the hospital that you're only on the earth for a short time, and the people in your life, the actors in your life that sort of show up once in a while and stuff like that. It's important to acknowledge them and recognize them, and you'll be gone one day, and it's just better to be spend your time being nice.
Yeah.
They're like, what's the point otherwise? So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that was always in me. It just, I think, gets more reinforced when you're in a situation like that. It's just like, dummy, you must always be like that. There's no room for your petulance anymore, or those other things.
Yeah, I just think of, everybody has those periods in their life of the most intense situations. And I think at the end of the Alien, going into this one and all, that was, that was probably the peak of your intense personal struggles. The creativity just flew through it all. It's just how it gets affected
Yeah, it was the way I reacted. I've never been an angry guy. I've always either just sort of muddled my way through things or just been very sort of specific. Now I feel very sort of specific in how I want to approach things and stuff like that. I'm very sort of set, as you know. Like I keep away, especially with what we just talked about at the start of the show. You know, about what's going on in the States and stuff like that. I mean, I just lock myself away from the world and just indulge in my life.
Yeah. And you know,
It's terrible.
Sometimes I feel guilty about doing that, but at the same time I go, look, I hate this. I didn't create this mess, and I think I'm a pretty good person. I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of jerk-offs running the world. And that's it, because you get sociopathic psychos that want to run things, want to be the boss, and the nice people, the people that probably should be running it, don't do it.
Right. So the big thing, if you're asking me this year, the big existential question will be in November, that when we have this podcast, that so you put in a clown as president. So I'm giving 63 million people a mulligan for putting in a clown. We all knew I knew he was a clown to begin with, but that's fine. They want to put in they're very nihilistic people. They want to put in a clown. They want to blow things up. They put in a clown as president. I'll give them a mulligan on that, considering the situation that they're in. But knowing what they know now, 4 years later, if they still put in a clown, the same clown, knowing what they know now, then I think we're going to have a big talk in November.
And I've dealt with my mom, God bless her soul, she died a few years ago. But for the last 15 years of her life, she didn't know who she was, basically. And I see Joe Biden, I go, no, I can't. No thanks. I can't morally vote for either one of those people. One for obvious reasons, and one because I feel pity for Joe Biden. He's declining, and they're propping up with his fucking wife. Are you kidding me? You're embarrassing this guy.
Yeah, well, I don't follow the logic ultimately in that. I think you just have to get rid of Mr. Trump and put him on a train back to Queens with his family.
Then you know what? Pick who you want to be president, put him as vice president. For Joe Biden. Then I'd say I'll vote for the guy, because
I would imagine that's probably coming down the pipe. I would less care about Joe Biden than what's going to be behind him, and that's probably going to be the government. I think they're probably propping up. I think in him doing the thing from his basement, I think it's a puppet. They're actually showing it now.
It's so embarrassing. Although it's entertaining, I gotta say, as a Canadian, what can you do but just ride the donkey? And
unfortunately, they're the most powerful nation on earth. So
and isn't that funny? Yeah. Look at the two guys that are vying for the leadership, and this is the most powerful. This is crazy.
Again, big.
Look at we're getting into it. We're not even political people.
Again, it's an enormous existential question that the most powerful nation on earth can put these people in the highest places. It
is a true WTF. And on that note, we're going to see you for more of Coy Paradixio. This is it from episode 21.
I look forward to the next song. The next song, I think, is one of my most favorite songs of all.
Yeah, with some new players too and stuff, and we'll get into that.
Well, yeah, it's a fun song for sure.
All right, so from this week, bye-bye.